This is actually my second trip to Bangalore. The first one was a bit chaotic. I mean, years ago, I came with a Pakistani delegation of the Track 2 delegation. And we were given a very nice dinner at the governor's residence. And there was supposed to be, public event. But then we were told to kind of bugger off. The public, they said, was not in a mood to listen to Pakistani speak here, so we kind of kept our silence and left. So I'm glad that the city is opened up to hear a Pakistani. When I was asked what should I, would I speak on? I wish I could be speaking on some startup, but our only startup is the military. So that's what I'm going to talk about. I'd use my 15-20 minutes to talk about not just the Pakistani military, but also offer you my thoughts on what Pakistan is going through. It's very sad that despite being neighbors for 76 years, we have the Berlin Wall between us remains. And we know about each other, and yet we don't know about each other. I'm also reminded of this conversation I once had with this taxi driver. The taxi I took from Atari, from the Atari-Wagah border. I was going to Amritsar airport, and we started chatting, and this young man, the taxi driver, was from a village on the border. And he asked me, he said, "Do you have roads like we have here? Do girls go to get educated? Do you have tractors?" And I suddenly realized that, I was actually very lucky to be able to walk through this wall that is there. So anyway, I've been here 3-4 days, and the perception that I have is that there is a sense, which one also gets looking at the Indian media, that there is something about to change in Pakistan, especially as far as military's power is concerned. Sorry to disappoint, but that's not factual. That's not true. Military is not weak. It is not weakened in any form or shape. What has happened is that it's become less popular than what it used to be. That does not necessarily mean that people are ready to take up, to protest or to go out on the streets to march. The mood is there to march. Don't get me wrong. It is in that twilight zone, the military, between popularity and lack of it. When I was, a young girl, and the army had lost the war in 1971 and lost a wing of the country, we in West Pakistan understood that a wing was lost, but we still were not sensitive to the failure. And so I remember as a child, we go to this national park right outside Lahore, and there would be, these trucks driving, army trucks driving on the road, and me and my cousins, we would be kind of competing with each other who would wave the most. That popularity has definitely diminished. What I was at that age then, children at this age are not very excited about the military. It doesn't mean that people are not going to join the armed forces, because it's also a vocation, it's employment. So people will go, especially wherever there is opportunity. And in some respects, the military has also opened up, has been that melting pot. For years and years, province of Sindh, which during the 1980s, after Zulfikar Ali Bhutto was very rudely expelled from power by the military and had protested. I mean, they've suffered. They've fought the armed forces, the army, a politically powerful army of General Ziaul Haq. Today, there have been more inductions. So, in that respect, part of society where there is a realization that, if you can't beat them, join them, there is that sentiment, then, there is acceptance. But, you may get confused if you meet the local Sindhi elite. You'd be surprised, of course, because you'll hear a lot of unhappiness with Punjab, with the Punjabi establishment, with the military-dominated establishment, all of that. You'll hear all of that. Yet, you'll also have members of that elite join, and work hand in hand with the establishment. Now, a major shift in events has been Imran Khan's, cricketer turned politician Imran Khan's ouster from power, which has not been a popular development, because it came at the back of a newer generation of Pakistan. I mean, today 60% of Pakistan's population is between 18 to 35. It's a younger population which was born and which grew at the back of a discomfort, a huge discomfort of the whole war on terror and the narrative that built around it. Pakistan is a hub of terrorism. Pakistan is a victim of terrorism. And so the unhappiness, and Imran Khan brought at least the narrative of new promise. Your passport will get respected. This will be a Naya Pakistan. And suddenly, of course, prior to April 2021, April 2022, when the vote of no confidence was passed in the parliament, he was going through this period of unpopularity because he could not do much in terms of economy. Yet, surprisingly, it was like people themselves were very confused. I mean, they had tied hopes with him, and he was failing. And suddenly, you have the vote of no confidence. And the older leadership, not just the older leadership came returned, it also brought with it other developments, which was the beginning of the Ukraine war, the price of fuel going up, Pakistan's agreement with the International Monetary Fund, which technically should have been done by Imran Khan. But he delayed it. He delayed it also because he knew that the military was out to get him. So he kind of, he played his bets. We often in Pakistan talk about it, think about it, that, popularly in Pakistan, he has been referred to as the Dim, Imran Khan. Yet that's just one side of him. He's actually been very cunning and very sharp and street smart as far as public politics is concerned. He knew what would sell, what would, get people excited. So he did not do an agreement with the IMF and let it lay there until, they brought the change, because he knew he couldn't fight them there. And the other thing, of course, was this whole tamasha about American conspiracy to get him out. Partly true, but partly incorrect. Partly true because, and we'll get to relationship with the United States, but just leaving you with the thought that partly true because the military was selling this idea in Washington that Imran was not for relations with the United States, and there was a level of instability that he was bringing to the bilateral relationship, and they were keen to be back to somebody who they could deal with. And not true, of course, because at that point in time, there was minimum influence that the United States had with Pakistan to push Imran Khan out that way. So he understood that. And once he was removed, it also sent these shockwaves, not just to his supporters, but suddenly a shock, which made people realize that this is actually an institution which doesn't allow things to change. I mean, I remember that I would be, it was almost a mental torture when, on social media, PTI supporters accusing you of being a raw agent, of working for the enemy, etc., etc. And then the same people suddenly turned around and said, sorry, we didn't appreciate what you were saying. You were actually right. This is a military which has done grave harm to Pakistan. So that unpopularity is there. And so I feel that where the inflection point, if you call it an inflection point, the inflection point is that the military today is probably a little closer to a point where, unlike the past, where it could handle its image and handle domestic politics with soft peddling, it now has to be more oppressive. And oppressive in those parts of the country where it wouldn't use oppression. So getting a journalist like Arshad Sharif killed, or picking up people. I mean, today there are over 10,000 PTI supporters in jail. Nobody talks about them. More than 1,500 women are in jail. And so it's willing to be more aggressive and more ready. Now, what it reminds me of is that in Latin America, for example, in South America, militaries got unpopular and movements started because militaries were oppressive. And they came face to face beating up their own people. And that's when movements built. But Pakistan right now, so it's inched towards that, and therefore, three things that you need, to bring a change. It's missing. I mean, there is no socio-economic movement that is building. There is no leadership which is ready. And there is crisis, but no crisis big enough, which would pull people out. I mean, one has been looking at, for example, electricity bills going up. There are small protests here and there. I mean, in fact, in Pakistani Kashmir, people came out, protesting against high electricity bills. So there is nothing which is tying all these protests together into a movement. So that way, and therefore, the military has very successfully removed a leader and brought another one back, which is, Nawaz Sharif. And so, in that way, as far as relationships are concerned, its domestic partners are concerned, it has changed its partner. They plan to put somebody else on the driving seat, perhaps not Nawaz Sharif, maybe his brother, but definitely the party PMLN, because in Punjab, which is the battle for the heart of Pakistan, if you want Imran Khan to lose, then you have to bring somebody who can make sense in Punjab. It's not Benazir Bhutto's Pakistan's People's Party. So that's the relationship. But the more shocking, I think, partnership or worrying, for development for the Pakistani army is its relationship with its external partner, or former partner, which is the United States. And the fact of the matter is that we are it has found itself in a corner where international rents will not be available anymore. Pakistan, since the mid-1950s, has been through cycles of a relationship in which alignment with the United States has borne resources. And in most cases, it has been under military dictatorships. The country has survived. In fact, it is a typical, the problem of Pakistan is that it's a typical rent-seeking state. From the private sector to the public sector, the two kind of main sectors, and also the political class, are so used to economy being run that through decades, no real reforms have taken place. Under Benazir Bhutto, we signed a formula with the international power providers, which got us into the cyclic debt. And it's a huge problem. So the debt burden has increased through military to civil, because we were so used to money coming somehow. The debts were going up, but yeah, it gets paid off, so why worry? And in some respects, it is still an expectation that nobody would allow a nuclear Pakistan to turn into Somalia. And therefore, that behavior remains. But the military is in that phase where it doesn't want to give up on its relationship with the United States. And by the way, United States is also not eager to give up on that relationship. It's not investing in it. I mean, I always say that, if we were to look at American strategic and geopolitical moves through decades, when, around Nixon's time, it was boots on ground, they did Vietnam, they did Korea, then we come to Afghanistan, where it was subcontracting their wars. I say that we are at that third phase, where it's return on older investment. So if you're keen, the generals are still interested. And in the West, the general belief is that, look, when you talk to them, foreign diplomats in Pakistan, they say, yes, China has influence, but we have the soft power. Your political and military leadership is personally, the stakes are invested. We know who is where. We can sweet talk them. I also believe that the military, having started a new phase of a relationship in 2016 with CPEC. A lot of you would think it started with 2006 with Gavadir. Yes, that's true, but putting it in full gear, in a fifth gear. That happened around 2016 when CPEC agreement was signed. Having done that, it was the military which kind of pulled back. It was not just that they were uncomfortable with Nawaz Sharif. I believe they were uncomfortable with allowing a civilian government, A, to handle CPEC, and B, because it didn't allow them the intervention, the control, and the balancing that they wanted between United States and China. And so General Bajwa, the former army chief, I would hold him responsible more than Imran Khan, to have pulled Pakistan back as far as CPEC is concerned, and very consciously doing it because wanted to get back. And he had hoped. I mean, it's so interesting that, when was it, 2019? Right before COVID. General Bajwa was in London, and he gave a talk at the IISS, and to quote him verbatim, his words were, we, Pakistan, have a genetic relationship with the West. I mean, it's a very odd terminology. And if you give us something, we will, stick here, not move to China. And he had hoped. In fact, the trip he took to the United States with Imran Khan, and later actually, before he retired, his last trip to Washington, I mean, his plea was, give us hardware, help us survive, and, we're ready to work. So that is a relationship which is now, I wouldn't, exactly, lack of better word, I wouldn't call in trouble, but it has changed. The United States or the West does not have the energy or the resources to invest in Pakistan. So it's being dealt with through financial mechanisms like the Financial Action Task Force or the IMF. And that is what is the basis of Pakistan's strategy of trying to keep a balance between China and the United States. Finally, as far as China is concerned, China remains Pakistan's lifeline and is emerging to be, more of a lifeline, without Pakistan actually investing the same way in that relationship. There's greater dependency without uttering the word "I love you." So, they know that there's nobody else which is, who's that keen to bail them out. So China is playing the long-term game because they understand that ultimately, this is an apple which could fall in their lap, except that they don't want to be, they're not too keen to go and pick it themselves. Right now, the three services of the armed forces are all equipped, majorly equipped by Chinese hardware. Western component of military hardware has reduced. It's almost like an 80 to 20 equation. And in order to keep that balance, because that balance is necessary at this moment, the army does not want to lose its place in the overall strategic nexus. It wants to be able to, play. And in fact, it's also very conscious of its ability to remain relevant in the Middle East. yes, with all the financial burden, with all the financial problems, Pakistan is not in a position to attract, and the only, even the Middle East, but the two things which may work for it. One is allowing the Middle East, which is emerging as the new set of patrons for Pakistan, to kind of invest in the country, buy assets, almost become like the colony and a place for Arab investment. But also bank on this one thing, that as far as security is concerned, Pakistan still remains very relevant. It remains very relevant to the Saudi royalty, very critical. And so for, for the Gulf and for Qatar and, of course, there is this, and it has been very carefully, it's like treading on eggshells, dealing with Iran. But I think this is how the army is building its relationship, internally and externally. I'll stop here and we'll have more conversation.
It's always so fascinating to listen to you that one doesn't want you to stop talking, and I think the 1.5 hours is just not going to be enough. But I'll dive right into it, first by pointing out that this is one of the most excellent books. Not just, it's called Military Incorporated, but it's not just on the military. If any of you have been reading Ayesha, following her work, you know that she speaks to much more than just the security, military security establishment. There's another book which you may not have seen. This, when I was with Himal South Asian, we had the privilege of having Ayesha write for us and putting her on the cover. One book you'll have to buy, the other one you can ask me for a copy. I have some of them. I want to dive straight into what you started with, addressing the optimistic opinion in India about Pakistan's military and how that is probably wrong. Perhaps some of the optimism is because Pakistan has announced elections and Nawaz Sharif is coming back, and there is a feeling that the politics will be restored in a way that it would benefit the country. But that's certainly not something that you're suggesting. You've said that the army has brought back Nawaz Sharif. So how are people in Pakistan to look at the elections on February 8th?
Right. So, the joke about Pakistani elections, at least the one which is about to be held, is that, we don't know the date, but we know who's going to be elected. The formula is very much obvious to people, that Nawaz Sharif is being brought back because there's no alternative, and there's no way to push back Imran Khan. Now, there is a large population, and the problem is, in an electoral democracy, what happens is that, the biggest survey is naturally elections. That's when you find out who's more popular, right? Now, so we have this assumption that if free and fair elections are held, Imran Khan will win. There is youth, which is excited. There are women. There are many more people. And what is also understandable is that these traditional parties, the Pakistan People's Party and the Pakistan Muslim League, they are so kind of invested in their structure, that political structure, that there is no room for a newer leadership. Newer leadership, new stakeholders. I mean, over years, for whatever, the nature of Pakistan's economy, there is a Every 10 years, my argument has been that every 10 to 15 years, there is a middle class which transforms into an upper middle class, and there is a new elite which emerges. Especially under Musharraf, if you look at Musharraf years, and because of the money and resources available, there was a new set of leadership that emerged. There were NGOs, there were startups then. And these are people who were eager to kind of be part of power politics. And there was no opportunity there. So Imran Khan is one. So nothing of that has changed. And the other thing is that, again, free and fair elections, but with Imran Khan disqualified or Imran Khan unable, even if he's able to kind of contest, we are not sure that he's organized the cadres in a way that will get people to go and vote. But a general sense is he will win. His popularity is all-time high. But the other reaction that one hears from people is, I've been randomly calling friends, family, and I said, what if he's disqualified, he can't contest? Then the answer is, we'll sit home, not vote. So you'd probably also, there'll be a situation of a low turnout. But definitely, and even 2-3 days ago, a couple of political leaders, PTI leaders, who were being asked or forced to join these others. So PTI has been now broken into shell companies, right? And the military wants these people, leaders, to get parked there. And so, and they refused. And so they've been picked up, put in jail. So definitely there is this lack of faith in the next elections. So 2024 will happen, but what comes out of it, nobody's kind of losing their sleep over it.
You've made the important point elsewhere that the Pakistan army has moved from a situation where they were controlling the government through frequent coups to one where they're controlling governance. And that's obviously very significant and perhaps far more dangerous. To what do you attribute their continuing ability to hold on to power?
Because the political system has not changed. I say that Pakistani political parties have been very lucky when you compare India and Pakistan. They've always fallen back on, this military doesn't allow us to do this, that, and the other. There is so much more that needs to be done. For example, military at the end of the day is a bureaucracy. And you need to push it through institutional reforms. Now, what political leaders tend to do, however, is try to build personal links. We know this general, we know that general, nothing. Reforms within the political party system as well.
But we always end up talking about the three major parties. There are also movements which have been directly against the army, for example, the Pashtun Tahaffuz movement. And of course, we know about the unrest in places like the Balochistan. So do you feel those movements have no traction?
See, Pashtun Tahaffuz movement is in the tribal areas. And it has traction, but it's a very ethnic movement, number one. Let's also not forget that 21% of Pakistan military is Pashtun. So, now what the tribal youth, and these are and very sensible talk. It's not that they're not sensible. Partly sensible, let me rephrase, because they also tend to get very emotional and then get arrested. So where they're trying to, the main strategy seems to be, because what the military is trying to do with them is, because of there are more Pashtuns in the military and all of that, so they don't go and eliminate them or kill them. So Manzoor Pashtun, for example, this young leader of the Pashtun Tahaffuz movement, they don't arrest him, they don't try to get him eliminated in another way. But his other partner, Ali Wazir, who also happens to be a member of the parliament, every now and then he gets arrested. They're not giving them that space either. I think where the problem is that the political system is very patronage driven. And unless the Pashtun Tahaffuz movement, erupts into something bigger, I mean, there is a lot of discomfort happening right now with the government deciding to evict Afghans out of Pakistan, and they're protesting. But that protest itself has not changed the government policy. That's one. Now, when it comes to Balochistan, the Baloch nationalists, let's not forget that except for there are a huge number of Baloch tribal leaders who are working with the government. And in fact, the movement, which has a violent component as well, does not comprise of Baloch tribal people, but actually Baloch middle class, which is extremely frustrated and exhausted. Now, where things have changed is that the military trying to solve political problems militarily has created a lot of frustration. And so is the idea of Pakistan relevant today? I'm less convinced. Will it be another 1971? The answer is no. We're definitely not at the point where, there's this pressure from within to kind of, or the capacity to move away, or any pressure from outside to break Pakistan into, smaller parts. So therefore, the army thinks that, there'll be more collateral damage, and they'll take those losses. And it's so interesting that I think the bigger problem that, the country faces at the moment is shortage of, its economy. And the fact of the matter is that, Mia Nawaz Sharif has returned, but whoever is the prime minister has to show a growth rate of 6% plus.
And you've called that a magical figure, which is almost impossible.
It'll be, it'll be difficult. It'll be difficult. And it will also require a lot of political stability. The fact that the military is there at the center is in itself a major instability. So do I, if I've taken my money out, am I going to bring it back? Knowing that, one day I get picked up. So investment coming in, then you have institutions that are not, that are competing with each other. There is the judiciary, there is the political parties, the military, each has its own plan, right? So what if, for example, an asset is sold? I mean, one of the formula that the military has found to kickstart the economy is to retire expensive assets, like the Pakistan International Airlines or the Pakistan Steel Mill or the railways, etc., get into mining, getting into agriculture. Now, there are major areas where you don't have a political leadership or a political consensus at the back of it. And the general, who's now suddenly turned into an economist, feels that he can bring all those changes. And my suspicion is that he is bound to go wrong. And once you retire these assets, you're also going to be throwing out a lot of people out on the streets, which is a lot of unhappiness. Agriculture, they have a huge plan of actually turning into contractors, making land available. So between Sindh and Punjab, 145,000 acres have been procured. And
sorry to interrupt, Ayesha, but you've also, laid out the relationship with the external actors and the, change in the relationship of the military with the U.S. and the closer, weaker relationship with China, which is still in kind of abeyance in a way, but China is interested, you said. What about the economic staying power of the military from rent-seeking? Are the taps going to be turned off, and would it matter, given the fact that the army has such huge internal control of parts of the economy?
see, it's still looking for patronage.
But can it survive without it?
It's trying to kickstart the economy. That's what I was trying to build on. That's a medium to long-term plan. It wants money today. At least $7 billion annually have to be paid to repay debts. So the need is now. And therefore, patronage becomes important. Right now, this morning I was reading that there is a shortfall of $600 million, perhaps, that it's seeking from China. So you have to go somewhere. So, like this year has been okay. So what you do is that you reduce your exports. Somebody in fact pointed out, we're having this 2 days conference organized by Takshashila Institution. So somebody pointed out that, for instance, if you look at the figures, one of the major imports, Pakistan's import bill is high, generally high. Oil is, of course, one of the contributors. But there are other things as well. One of the burdens is tea, import of tea. And that bill has not gone down. Why aren't political players talking to their constituents that, hey man, let's not drink tea, reduce it. We can't import so much. So nobody is ready to give up because so the elite, especially the ruling elite, which includes the military, military is on top of it, right now is not ready for getting ready for reforms. Pakistan is at a point where You have to carry out reforms. Is it the elite in a mood to carry out reforms? No.
You're talking about the economy. Is this something which would be a factor in the elections as well, or not really?
It will be. I mean, I suppose it will. I mean, there's a lot of unhappiness. I mean, Shehbaz Sharif, which is Nawaz Sharif's younger brother, recently we went out and he was kind of booed and shooed away by people. I mean, people have to get their children out of school because it was either putting food on the table and paying electricity bills or sending them to school. So, these kind of mini crises are developing. So there is unhappiness. And on the other hand, I mean, I have to point out, I mean, this new caretaker prime minister decides to go on a trip to the UNGA to give a talk, to make a speech at the UNGA, diverts the flight to Paris, goes up to the Eiffel Tower to have a meal, $300 per head, then goes to New York, stays with his entourage, comes back via London.
He's clearly not seeking votes.
No, but it's definitely not a behavior of a country which is running out of economic options. You don't do that. So the question is, again, the military itself, its spending. So the entire burden is being shifted to the man of the street. So the IMF says, I need money. You have to pay me back. And they say, all right, what do we cut? All right. We will add more taxes to the electricity bill, to the utilities. The IMF expects Pakistan to increase its tax base. Technically, Pakistan's tax collection is not bad. It can compare with, for example, Bangladesh. People pay. The problem is the base is narrow. So whenever there is pressure from the IMF, it's the same bunch of people who end up paying more. The elite, which is the businessmen, the military. I mean, when was it? Under Imran Khan's government, the military got this, free ticket to heaven. The foundations, which run businesses, they were exempted from paying tax, and nobody has gone back, to taxing them. So you don't tax them, you don't tax agriculture, you don't tax big entities. So
there's a feeling, I think, especially here, and since you are here in India, that anti-Indian fears of India are also what has kept the military in power for so long. There was a time when no Pakistani aspirant for the prime ministerial chair could have an election without mentioning Kashmir. I think that's somewhat perhaps less relevant now. But does anti-Indianism still carry the same political leverage, whether for the politicians or for the army in Pakistan now?
That is something which has changed. I mean, unless you would argue that, India is standing, Indian military is standing on the door, is about to knock the wall and come in. That's, when people will get together. But no, generally that's not something which, honestly, the worry of the man on the street is very different today. And with my own research, which was even, a few years ago, fieldwork, I found that it's not that people don't talk about Kashmir. Kashmir is a popular part of the popular narrative, but the reaction was, for example, I did interviews throughout the country, trader merchants and businessmen, and you'd ask them that should we trade with India? Yes, we should trade with India. Also, what happens with Kashmir? So it'd get different answers. I mean, some were like, "Acha to phir aapko mil gaya." Have you got Kashmir? Or that with this kind of economy, do you think you can get Kashmir? So for different reasons, people didn't want this issue to stop from moving forward. And I would argue that, the sense which one got was that under General Bajwa, even the military was ready to accept. Except that I think what needs to be understood here in India is that a perception that Pakistan is completely down and out, and therefore it will be happy to be treated as as an enemy which doesn't have, anything left in it to fight, and therefore it'll be forced to accept an option, is not acceptable. It has to be some form of a win-win, some accommodation where they understand some face saving.
So do you think the Indian sentiment about Pakistan has changed? Has it gotten harder? Do you think there are differences in different sections of the Indian opinion? How do you assess it?
Of course it's hardened. My own sense, I started coming to India, my first visit was 2002. And I came the first time in the middle of the, eyeball to eyeball standoff. And yet it was easy to come. And through all these years, for me, a sense of discomfort set in the last, I would say, 6 to 7 years. When you feel that, you're not welcome, if you're in Delhi, you better shut up about your identity.
Just keep coming to Bangalore. I can tell you, you're most welcome here.
No, I've felt very good being here. But I think, generally people to people, this cricket match, the cricketers were good with each other. And I think that generally, the Indians were good about it, the public.
You're generous.
Yeah. And, except for certain cities, and Pakistanis have always been very welcoming. That I can say very proudly that, no Indian city would ever be able to compete Pakistan's hospitality. Not because, we are impressed or worried. It's because Pakistanis are hospitable. And I think somehow we've been through that, curve of looking at India just as an enemy. It's a neighbor that we don't know, but we're still fascinated by it.
Your love for your country really shines through, You're critical of the establishment, but how much you love your country. And with that, I'll ask my last question, because I know a lot of people will want to ask you questions. And that's what you've said about, writing this book. And I think you've said that this book actually cost you your home because you can no longer go back there. Do you think you could reflect a little bit on it? Even in your speech, you talked about how, being called a raw agent at times because of the work you did. It's a lonely road for you.
It is. And especially, when you also try to write for the media, Indian media. It is, and you know, I mean, the reason that I've kept on writing is not because I love Pakistan less. In fact, that's my indication of that I'd love it far more. And I want to, as an individual, keep communication with, you know, at least a limited number. I mean, whoever reads a newspaper or, that to explain Pakistan to them. So that has been that effort. I mean, the Pakistan I left 5 years ago has also changed in a, if you ask from a personal perspective, in a major way. And, because there is fear, there are other people who are there, other actors. And so, different kind of a language being spoken, a different political language, I mean. So, you look back and you're like, this is what it has turned into, and it's tough, I'll admit it's emotionally tough. And, I remember that, I'll finish with two stories. I mean, I remember the first time I realized that I couldn't go home. My, immediate instinct was, why don't I come to India? At least breathe in the same air. Nobody can stop the wind from passing through from one country to the other. Of course, realized it wasn't a good idea. But, it was so interesting. One last thing. So, I went to see the famous Vaga Atari ceremony in 2006. First time in my life from the Indian side. It just so happened that I was there and I decided, let me go and see it. And, normally when I travel, wherever you're staying, I leave my passport in a safe place. But that particular day, for some odd reason, I was carrying it with me in my backpack. So we went and sat down. I don't even mind the stomping of feet. That's what soldiers do. But it's what they do within the next 10 minutes. By all the national songs from here, national songs, people going completely nuts. And I remember people would get up from this side, whether it was Bande Mataram or something. And I held on to my backpack. And, for dear life. And I was like, no, I'm not getting up. I'm on the wrong side. I'm sure I can't do it today in your side. I'd be immediately lynched and dragged out. But, that, and by the way, the second time I saw the ceremony was from the Pakistani side, many years later. And so when the gates would open, and there was something, I think there was some Indian song being played, which both sides were then singing. And also, returning to the 2006 visit, I also remember that when, after all this 10 minutes of madness, when people were leaving and one side is allowed to leave, is somehow expected to leave first, the Pakistani side was going first. And you see these ordinary people on the Indian side waving to these, strangers on the other side and the strangers on that side.
The last time I was at the Wagah border was, for me, a good memory because I was there as part of the trip made by Prime Minister Vajpayee and all the good feeling, and we had Devanand being his debonair self on the border. I came in from the Pakistan side because we had gone ahead as part of the press party. But I had also been reporting for 4 years from Punjab and based out of Chandigarh. So when I was on the Pakistani side, I suddenly saw this host of Indian journalists who I knew very well. So just like the kind of bhai Pakistani Indian, I was waving at them and they were waving at me. But I wouldn't probably want to go there anymore. But with that, we should open it up to the audience for questions. And we have very little time, so if you can keep your questions sharp, that will give Ayesha more time to respond.
Ma'am, how do you look at the China factor working in Pakistan, and do you think they have got any say in the political outcomes next?
See, China factor is there and it isn't there. I mean, socially, we are not connected with them. They're strangers to us. We know Chinese are there, and China is very slowly and gradually investing in media, in being there. So the visibility is there. But that connectivity, the natural connectivity that we perhaps have with you guys, or a bit more with, compared to the Chinese, with the Western people, it's still not there. But as far as day-to-day political decision-making, Chinese style is it doesn't interfere. It lays out its strategic objectives and it's there. You have to negotiate around it. They don't interfere with day-to-day politics. They're not American. So, but they have a very important strategic relationship with Pakistan. As I told you, all the three armed forces, services of the armed forces, have Chinese equipment predominantly. There are naval exercises that take place on a regular basis, their interests. But, they just don't interfere in the day-to-day politics. Money is an important thing. I mean, they keep investing, putting, money there. I mean, after so many years, in 2016, a major investment in one go was made by the Chinese, $26 billion. I mean, the program was $60 billion, but $26 billion came, and that was put by the Chinese.
Hi, I'm a research analyst at the Takshashila Institution. I have two questions, and I'll be quick. So what do you think about the state of the Indian Ocean region today? There's obviously some evolving posture of the Pakistan Navy, of Pakistani foreign policy, and there's obviously China's own role in the Indian Ocean region that's been changing with Indian concerns towards Chinese presence in Sri Lanka, in Maldives, in Seychelles, and so on. How do you see the state of the region? I mean, in the near future, how do you see it changing? And the second question is...
Can we just, that's going to need quite an answer. Can we just let her answer that, and at this time we'll come back
Sure,
to her.
thanks so much.
See, in the Indian Ocean region, Pakistan has always, I mean, its main strategy, naval strategy has been sea denial. And for a long time, it's been coastal defense. Now, what it doesn't want is to be kind of considered as one of the less important littoral states. So it says that, West Asia is where its interest lies. Karachi is at a very important point in the region for all the traffic which goes through the Suez Canal. It's significant for China. And a question which I at least keep asking my friends in the Navy is that what happens if Indian Ocean heats up as a result of South China Sea heating up at some point? And now the the operation people are inclined towards China, of course. But strategically, I'm not sure that either Pakistan or India, if you think India will be taking part actively in fighting the war, then I'd encourage you to rethink. I don't think that either India or Pakistan would be playing an active role. They might play a support role, of course, because if US and China, contest each other, their equipment, the refurbishment and supplies, etc., probably there may be a role there, but nothing beyond that. And very, I think more importantly, Pakistan that way will try not to, of course, take sides. But if it has to take a side, I'm assuming that it will be to support China in whatever support role it can.
Good evening, ma'am. Thank you for the very insightful conversation. One question with regard to next year's election. It's likely that Nawaz Sharif will come back to power. What is your sense on his policies with regard to America, China, and India? And do you feel he'll be allowed the space to pursue those policies?
Sorry, what?
Will he be allowed the space to pursue those policies?
See, I'm not sure if Nawaz Sharif is going to come into power, honestly. I said in the beginning, PMLN, maybe his brother, but honestly, they've brought back Nawaz Sharif because without Nawaz Sharif, PMLN cannot even imagine contesting these elections. It's his vote bank. Whether they're going to make him the Prime Minister, the army, is a big question mark. And again, the reason being that he tends to go in all sorts of directions. Firstly, forget about relations with regional relations. The biggest worry is that he wants to then kind of get even with people who have put him in trouble. His the last time he was in power, he took Musharraf to court. The army is still not ready to go through that. So they don't trust him, he doesn't trust them either. And this is a very tricky relationship. Now, if his party, let's imagine he comes into power, and his first speech after a return to Pakistan, he talked about, without naming India, he talked about regional connectivity and trade. So that remains something that on his agenda. And by the way, let me tell you, it also is part of the army's agenda. Army is not averse to it. Army was not averse to the idea of trade with India, even when he was ousted and Pathankot and the rest of it happened. The problem was, and it's got nothing to do with, of course, it's a problem on our side. And the problem was the military wanted to be kept in the loop. And Narendra Modi's visit, I think, could have been handled better on our side. Not that shouldn't have welcomed him, not, Nawaz Sharif took him to his house. I think he should have made it a bigger thing, called everybody else. I said, let's welcome the Indian Prime Minister. The military's sense at that point, I'm assuming, is that it felt it was being kept out. There were these two guys trying to make a relationship, and they were going to be out of the loop. And therefore, this time around, of course, there are lesser possibilities for the military to repeat, the sub-conventional warfare mechanism that it has had. But also, I mean, I think that army is not averse to the idea of trade with India. It just wants to be part of that. China, again, China is, beyond, it's not something which is contested. It's going to stay. And even if Nawaz Sharif comes, I mean, he was never reversed to in the first place. And in fact, when he was there from 2013 to 18, I think that was the best combination we could have got, Pakistan could have got. Trade relations with India, but also trade relations with China. And Nawaz Sharif was, at that point in time, definitely the best man to have managed to, who could have explained and talked to both sides and keep them in the loop, that, look, I am not going to leave one for the other. So China is there to stay. United States, I think there's nothing much left in that love affair for us. The pivot towards Indo-Pacific, there are no resources. There is no kind of investment. And I think even to get the minimum out of the American relationship, there are two sides of it. One is, I think Pakistan has to put its house in order first. If you want American investment in startups or in technology or something else, we need to put our house in order. That's one. The other is, we also have to be careful of American intentions. America is not something, I mean, we've dealt with them for longer than you have. They are pretty tricky guys. So, they're not cool customers. So
I think they have interests, they don't have friends.
Yeah, so very quickly, one needs to watch out for what the Americans are doing and saying. I think, when we come to the next government, by then, it'll be the conversation, the narrative about the relationship is generally very negative. There are not too many buyers in Pakistan domestically who are very fond of the US.
Sorry, just a quick question, but it's a follow-up, and you've already answered a part of it, which is the fact that the United States' interest in Pakistan has modified over the years. What, in your opinion, has led to that modification? And does the fact that India has surprisingly, much against the older policy, moved much closer to the United States, is that part of what you see as United States' plan for this part of the world? And the fact that their interference in Pakistan, thankfully, then is minimized. So just a few words from you.
The pivot started, there's actually been a strategy to bring United States and India together. A lot of Indian scholars who went, and the think tanks in the United States. There has been, I've traveled to, stayed, worked in the US and seen that transformation very deliberately being worked. 2012, definitely a pivot, when United States moved away from the war on terror and coming back to the conventional state-to-state conflict, where China became very important. So as China remains central bogey in strategy, India is important. India is significant. Pakistan is less significant, because there's nothing much that Pakistan can offer United States in terms of fighting China. But I think where America, the way America is playing at the moment, is it's also not giving up on Pakistan. Because it doesn't want somehow for Pakistan to jump into a Chinese lap entirely. It's trying to hold it back. You know, these personal-to-personal relations that they've invested in or they're investing in is precisely what's doing the trick. Holding Pakistan back from this ultimate departure. So we still remain there. And my personal thinking is that, you know, in the previous, in this new kind of Cold War, Pakistan actually benefits from the international contestation much less as compared to India. I mean, India has decided which side it's going to go. So America, you know, so technology, transfer, this, that, and the other, a lot of things are being negotiated. Pakistan, it has to do this balancing. And part of the problem lies in the basis of Pakistan's foreign policy traditionally. Because the two drivers in Pakistan's foreign policy have always been India and economy. Yeah, third one, military. Military, economy, and India. And economy is now kind of turning out to be kind of more of a decider.
Yeah, the political protests, breakdown of law and order, and vandalism that occurred on 9th May in major urban centers of Pakistan was very unique to my mind. Can you tell us something more about that? Thank you.
You know, there's a very interesting video, which small clip somewhere. Google it and you'll find it. So Imran Khan is sitting with some of his guys, and they're like, you know, we're discussing NRO, the National Reconciliation Ordinance, which brought Benazir Bhutto back. So somebody asked that, you know, why are the generals doing like this? We trusted them. And he says, no, these generals are not worth any trust. Bring 20,000 people out on the streets and they'll pee in their pants. You know, that's the statement he makes. The problem is, and that formula is correct, the only problem is Imran Khan, even at his best time, could never get 20,000 people out on the street. So the mayhem happened. And the mayhem was also kind of amplified a bit more than what it was. So, you know, maybe you laugh, I certainly did, that the present army chief was planning to turn the Corps Commander's house in Lahore into a museum. So people should come and see the destruction of what happened on May 9th. Then somebody told him that, no, you know, let's not do that. The point is that it was hundreds of people, and they were allowed to come and do that because of partners within the armed forces. For example, Lahore, the damage to, there's no way that I grew up in Lahore Kant, right? Now, and the Lahore of my childhood is very different. Now you have checkposts on every entry point to Lahore Kant, which, by the way, is more than 80% civilian. It's no longer military. The checkposts, everybody is checked. Every car is checked. And suddenly you're telling me that, you know, you have thousands of people come in, you know, actually walk from other part of the city and manage to get to the Corps Commander's residence and then damage it, take away the peacock, you know, somebody running away with the peacock and all of that. The Corps Commander at that point in time was pro-Imran. He was somebody who believed that, you know, Imran was still the good guy and should be brought in. And he told his you know, his brigadiers, his general, his GOCs to step down and let people can come. Ye hamare log hain, right? And you know, then it was a tamasha which went out of hand. Peshawar, of course, people were angry, and it also happened because right before May 9th, a few weeks before that, the Punjab police tried to arrest him, to present him to court, and they wouldn't. You know, he had gotten, I mean, he had actually gotten these guys, the tribal jihadis, actually, to come and protect. So everybody was playing a strained game, but nothing in terms of resistance. I mean, there was never, May 9th was never a Tahrir Square. It was not the Arab Spring which would have changed things.
I think we have to wrap up now. It's a pity, but as you know, you're welcome in Bangalore. You're going to be made to feel at home. We'll all take care of you, so please come back, and we'll ask BIC to give us a much longer session so you can keep talking to us and we can keep learning from you. Thank you so much, Ayesha.